Hi, it's Danny Newcomb, and today is my first podcast Zoom video for my new experiment, Rainy Days podcast, and it's with Mike Mcready. Mike Mcready is my oldest friend and a phenomenal guitar player, kind of like the spark, I think, in many ways for that high point in the song when you want the song to take off. Well, that's Mike Mcready. He's also very funny, so you can turn the podcast and hear some jokes. We won't be talking about the time we got arrested or somebody who is unnamed stole Mike's BMX bike, but I do have this. This is the guitar that Mike played first time they were on Saturday Night Live, and we got together after that, and he said, "Do you want a Les Paul?" Because he knew I always did, and I didn't have one back then. So he gave me this. I think it's been broken about 4 or 5 times. You can see the neck joint here, and there's a doozy there. But it played great, and I ended up taking it on tour with goodness for 3 years after that. So thank you, Mike. Anyways, enjoy the podcast. It's through DannyNewcombMusic.com. So I kind of was thinking about this, and the more I thought about talking to you,
yes, sir.
I was like, how do we put 45 plus years into a conversation? Because I think it was 72 that my parents bought that house in Laurelhurst.
Right.
And I was like, you already lived there, right?
I thought you already lived there. But now why? How come I'm confused on that? Because we moved there in 1970 in Laurelhurst. But I remember you're the first guy I met. We were friends. Yeah.
Like, I just met this weird kid down the block. He's got a Schwinn Typhoon, and he's a nut. He has all these animals in his room.
You had animals. You had all sorts of stuff. And later on, you're the first guy to have a guitar on the block, which is an all-changing thing in the world of our thing too.
That's a Jukebox Hero string right there.
I'm a Jukebox Hero. But yeah, no, we were fucking Cub Scouts and all that stuff, you know?
No, I remember I got a paper route, and I got my first leather jacket, like that red leather jacket.
Dude, the red leather jacket was a killer jacket.
So I wanted to start when we were kids, which we kind of already started doing, and ask you kind of like, did you see Laurelhurst? I mean, it was not, you couldn't get into the beach club. We couldn't get we were like proper Laurelhurst. We were like ghetto Laurel, right?
Dude, it's just our struggle was real. It was no.
Right?
Yeah. No, believe me, we grew up in a very sheltered place called Laurelhurst in Seattle, Washington. I felt
right.
But I also loved it, and we had fun, and we rode our bikes to the park together. We would ride our bikes like you wrote that song about all day on Sundays, and
right.
And then just do that kind of stuff, and then we'd throw dirt clods at each other, or we'd shoot each other with BB guns, or light your backyard on fire, or Sorry, your question though, in terms of growing up in Laurelhurst, was like, what was it?
Yeah, I mean,
how was it?
It was basically suburban. Like, I didn't really realize it until I lived in smaller towns like Olympia that are like real cities, like you're in a urban part of the city.
It was a very Truman Show-esque type place at times.
Right.
And everybody knew everybody else's business, I think. And it was very, white privilege, I guess I can use that word. Not knowing about any of that stuff because we grew up in such a small microcosm of all that.
Well, I think it also, I mean, the Stones were a lot like that too. Like Mick and Keith went to art schools, came from class families. And so there has to be a certain amount of security, safety, enough of a bubble so you can dream about doing things like that, right?
Or have the opportunity to do those things.
Right.
And luckily we had pretty liberal parents, from what I recall. It's just in terms of, there was some conservativeness to it, but it was more like, they allowed us to play music, and we would go and play music in your house super loud. My parents told me, they said, if you flunk any of your classes, we're going to throw you out of the house, but otherwise you can keep doing everything. So I got straight D's all the way through the rest of high school. And they were so pissed. They're like, we should have said A's. I'm like, yeah. Well, your parents were like educators, so too, right? They came from that. Or they came from a lot of scholarly, pressure. My parents were the same way. They didn't think it was going to become this obsession. Oh no. You and I went over to the Friel's house every day. Almost every day for 5 years, 6 years. Yep. That's paying a lot of musical time. That's like, that's a concerning amount of time of from parents. I mean, remember we used to ride our bikes over with our guitars, which seems insane to me now.
I wish there was a picture of that. I was thinking about it.
I remember it perfectly. Yeah,
I remember playing Jumping Jack Flash on my guitar while I was riding the dirt bike.
I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah.
But you and I did a lot of stuff together, and we listened to music together. We all started playing at the same time. You got a guitar. I kind of followed your lead on that. You had a Mateo. You had a Mateo SG, right? Before you had the Wizard. And so I got a Mateo Les Paul.
Yeah.
It was our early, let's try to do music thing, but I don't know if we knew about Kiss yet or.
Well, I remember getting a cassette of Live and listening to that, like on that little, one of those little cassette players, and sitting on my speaker porch, like with like 4 D-cell batteries in it, and just cranking it, and be like, blah, 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 Kiss.
Greatest thing in the world.
So great. I'm like, that's so much power. It's so much show. It's everything. It was like a whole
fantasy.
Reality. Yeah.
It was a brand new opening of my consciousness of, I want this. Whatever this is, I want to play music, and I want whatever. I don't know what this is, but it's so exciting. And also people out there should know that when we played at the Eckstein Talent Show, and in 1979, I guess, or 8, but you were going to do the Star Spangled Banner with your teeth on your SG. And then they were like, no, you can't do that because it's offensive or something.
Mr. Chin said that, right? Was that his name?
Somebody said it, but you still did it.
Yeah.
And it was crazy because you could do the Star Spangled Banner with your teeth when you were 13. It was just like, and it sounded really good. It was crazy.
Right. So Woolworths, we used to back in old Seattle, and kids could ride around, and like it was the early 70s. Boeing had crashed, and real estate was relatively inexpensive. My parents could afford to buy a house. We could ride all over the place on our dirt bikes, and we used to ride all the way down to University Village and all.
So awesome.
And, it was great.
Oh my God, the bike trail.
Music store down there.
I think they did.
The old guy would never let us play stuff, or maybe we were just too afraid to ask him.
Myers Music, was that what it was called?
So I guess a couple of things I want to talk about. I remember you being the musical guy. So I remember you introduced me to the Stones, which ended up being like a huge, like Mick Taylor is like the #1 influence when I was a kid. Like Taylor, But you wanted
to be Ace too, though. I thought
wanted to be Young too.
Oh, Angus for sure, yeah.
Right. But the Stones were a huge revelation for me because I didn't grow up with that at all. I got the Beatles at home, but you had the Made in the Shade record.
Exactly. Right. And that's funny that you brought that up because my mom, I think, was tired of me playing Queen and Van Halen so loud all the time. Specifically Van Halen.
Right.
I think David Lee Roth's screams were starting to drive her crazy.
Right.
So I remember coming up after I played Van Halen 2 or something, and she was like, "Hey, have you heard of the Stones? They're like, you should check out the Rolling Stones." My mom did.
So
I think she was. There wasn't a ton of talking about music in my house, though. I mean, my mom was an art teacher, as you know, and my dad a vet and worked for the city and all that stuff. But there wasn't a ton of talking about music. But she took me up to the Ave, and remember it was next to Jack in the Box. There was a record store there for a second on the Ave, and I got the Made in the Shade there, and that was the first time. I'm glad that I didn't realize that affected that way, because that was the first time I realized you could have rock and roll and it not be heavy. It could be, it could be Angie,
Yeah.
Isn't that great? That sounds great.
You got a stereo with both speakers. You got a true stereo. At my house, I just had one speaker that went into my bedroom because I couldn't afford to buy my own record player. But in your house, when your parents were gone at work, we could crank the stereo in your house.
Crank the shit out of it. It was kind of a beater, but it was great, right?
It was great. And Toys in the Attic and Queen News of the World, like we played those all the time. I
was just going to say that, Queen News of the World. I mean, that was all so integral and like, oh my God, this is rock. It's the greatest thing in the world. Or AC/DC. I mean, I never talk about AC/DC enough, but we were listening to fucking Highway to Hell and all that stuff all the time.
Well, and a big part of that was KSW is one of the first stations to break them in the United States. I heard that story a lot later. I was really surprised because I always thought that it was like everybody else, grew up with AC/DC being like one of the biggest bands.
Yeah.
The Northwest was kind of ahead of itself a little bit.
Steve Staten was playing the Dirty Deeds record. Remember, Rick had the Dirty Deeds record, but it was I think he had it. It was an import only. You couldn't get it.
Remember that.
And they also played. What was that? What's that? Soul Stripper or whatever? Is it Soul?
So good.
I always felt like I was getting away with something when I was listening to AC/DC back then. I'm like, this is dangerous, or this. All that. I remember the first time I ever had a kind of a crazy buzz was on that tea that your parents made, and they didn't want us to drink up at Pender.
Oh.
I remember them being very specific about not wanting to drink, and it was just a caffeinated tea.
Right.
But it was powerful shit. And I remember of course, my reaction is like, I want more. And
probably did serious BMX after that.
It was just regular tea. It was probably like, English breakfast or something.
It's like that Aerosmith song, right?
What is that Aerosmith? What?
Sleeping late and smoking tea.
Oh, sleep on that. Although my favorite is. Yeah. I mean, that groove on that is so. Right. And how those guitars are separated when they come back in is just. Right.
One
of my favorite sounds ever.
Laid back of the pocket groove that a big part of Stone's vibe and some of the Shadow vibe was part of.
Yeah. You had a pocket too that way, but I mean, from what I recall, I feel like I was always ahead of, at least in Pearl Jam, I'm always ahead of the beat. Right. And I have to pull myself back. Stone is behind it, and so somewhere we meet in the middle.
Yeah.
I mean,
I can see that, but I also think the way you have a real front of the beat intensity when you play, and I think the band, it's like it's kind of like the spark and the ignition. It really gets
cool.
On.
I thank you. I mean, I hope that's my role. I want to be the. Remember going to Cellophane Square? I mean, and how you and I would go to the Ave, and I wrote a song about that recently. It's because that was so important too, like our trips to the Ave on the bus.
Right. The Ave was a really big part of it. That was the place we could go, like when we were teenagers, and I think this was part of what was going on in Seattle back then too. Like that was part of the punk scene. The Ave was more than Capitol Hill, which was a little bit later. Yeah. So we were kind of, as kids, going into that and going, like I remember seeing Kurt Block in there a lot. And Kim
Scott McCoy.
Right?
Scott McCoy worked there. He was like always super nice, Right.
And so they were the generation ahead of us. And we were kind of like, okay, this is kind of where the big kids hang out, and musicians hang out. So. And
they had bootlegs and they were cool. And, there was Roxy Music and there was a couple others up there. But Cellophane was the one where I always went, this is something magical that we're getting to experience. Always.
And they would sell all those pictures from concerts taken by local people and stuff like that.
Kurt Block took pictures of Cheap Trick, and I bought one.
Right.
Rick Nelson. You bought one of Robin, maybe, or maybe I can't remember.
I did have one of Robin with a Rickenbacker, and his white suit.
Exactly.
Right.
And they had bootlegs, so it was like that made it even rock and roll even more mysterious to me, I think, at that time.
Right.
Remember? Because we couldn't afford those.
And it was before MTV. So that was the only way you get to hear what a band sounded like, unless they were, doing a TV show like on a major network. And those bootlegs. And
at the same time, when we should talk about how much like Shadow, we were like rehearsing and we would play shows on the weekend, and we were doing stuff as a band, getting on KCMU at the time with Shirley. We were kind of sarcastic when we were on that. I have the interview somewhere. But she handled us very well.
No, we put in a lot of time. We slept 8. I mean, if you got a paper route, save up for your first leather jacket so you look like a rocker, you're kind of, you're in.
Yeah. And this is before, Green River came out, they came around 1984, 85, and we'd already been playing since 79, like a lot of shows.
I know.
And I'm not saying that for any comparison thing, but that hasn't really been talked about a lot. We were playing. What we did
was we started out doing original music. That was always a big focus of us. It was
being the main writer of a lot of it, too.
You and Rick wrote a lot too, and then Bert wrote a lot of lyrics, and then you started writing. too.
I did.
He's right.
You guys were the primary writers back then, though, from what I recall. Yeah, Rick did "Don't Count the Tears," and I mean, you had "Tonight Lights Go Out," I think. With, and
well, I think Rick wrote some of the lyrics for that.
Yeah, he did.
So one of the songs I was thinking about was "Gates Closed on Me."
Yeah, that's the first time I ever did a lead.
Right, and it has that cool delayed lead, like we wait when.
That's your lead on it, though. You do that lead that goes, right? Isn't there two leads on it?
Don't steal my lick.
Yeah, there's two leads on that song, right?
Right, and you took the main focus one, the middle one.
Mine is like, I keep doing that same thing over and over again. I think I keep doing that. Yeah. But you wrote that. Those are pretty good lyrics too, right?
That was Bricko. Bricko wrote those lyrics.
That makes sense. Shivering, mindless moods of red, echoes of your mother's screams, or I can't. It was
right, and which that segues into the Angels.
Yes,
which profoundly influenced Rob.
Who were never as big as they should have been, and I always think of that when they were so good.
They're so good.
Yeah, No Secrets.
Yeah, and we used to play Marseille. That was the song we played, right?
Yeah. Was that? No, that's Long Night. Yeah, it was Marseille. We used to play that, and we used to play "Under My Wheels" by Alice Cooper.
Oh, we did. We played a couple. We played "Be My Lover" and.
Long Night. Right. I don't know if we played that song, but I love that song.
Right. I think we did. No Secrets. I know we played Marseille.
That was it. Whatever that.
Merci beaucoup. Yeah, blah blah blah. Yeah.
Great leads in that. But we played with Overlord, and we had a scene though, right? I mean, don't you recall?
Right, and
talk about that a little bit.
That was kind of like at the same time Green River was happening. I was talking to Matt Vaughn about this records, and he was talking about his parents. And so when his parents started out, with Queensryche, making Queensryche happen in the Northwest, it kind of brought some success to the metal scene in Seattle. Like that.
I was jealous of Queensryche. I'll say that
everybody
right now.
Was. Yeah, everybody in spandex was jealous of Queensryche.
So jealous.
Yeah.
My spandex were jealous too.
That's weird.
Yeah. But when they had some success, it was a big deal. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. When they got signed.
Well, because Seattle, so you have the 70s, you have Boeing crashing, you have all this stuff, you have the reigning heroes, Heart. I mean, who are oh my God, so great. I heard Keep Your Love Alive in QFC. I was in Seattle the other day and heard it in QFC. And that song, I mean, flute and all, when Ann Wilson starts singing, you're just like, holy crap, this is the real deal. It's
no doubt. Yeah. They were heroes and are still. Her voice is ridiculous. I mean, she made Robert Plant cry when they're doing, if you watch that Zeppelin, you ever see them do the Zeppelin thing? It's like crazy. It's like, whoa. Yeah. Like that guy hasn't seen enough,
But back in the day, so we had that, then the metal started happening. And at the same time, you had that punk movement like Stones, Green River.
Right.
But
we had the Trids, the Trids would play with us. They had the New York Dolls thing. We all gravitated. We'd go to parties and there'd be, Stone was sarcastic and we were, there was New York Dolls playing. There was Aerosmith playing. All of that was, the Overlord guys, we always partied with them. We played shows with them. I remember Johnny Ramone saying something like, you guys are all too nice here in Seattle. We used to try to fuck each other over and everything. It's and I'm like, wow, and that's really? He said that to me. And I'm like, that's who we are. I don't know, what to say other than that. So
well, and I think it was a huge DIY. We was renting out halls, putting on shows. There was nothing really going on, and that's part of the reason why we were looking to England and doing all that is because there was something going on in England. You know what I mean? There was a metal scene, and we wanted to be part of it.
And our city wasn't letting underage bands play anywhere. It's like we had to go make that shit happen.
We'd play roller rinks. Yeah.
Play roller rinks or play the God damn it. It wasn't the Frontier Room. It was the it's going to drive me crazy. It's like a loyal water buffalo or, oh man, you remember it was at the foot of Queen Anne. And we played in Fremont. You had to rent out halls. You had to rent a security guard. You had to print up tickets. You had to do all this stuff.
Right.
And it was great because it was character building. Everybody did the Green River.
Right.
Unless you were one of those, like a bar band that was playing covers, you know.
Right. That's the way you made money.
Yes.
Right.
I don't know where I'm going with this, but there was a scene that was happening before the quote unquote Seattle scene. And there was a scene before that scene. You know, there was the power pop stuff, you know, the Jim Baz night and all that stuff. And the Heats.
I went back to that and was watching Heats videos a couple of years ago. And I was, you know, that was the scene before us.
It was power pop. And we saw the Heats I think we went to when Ken Deans had the sailor outfit and then Chris started wearing it because we went and saw him at the, sorry to go way back, Mural Amphitheater. Right. And they were great. You know, I don't like
the one we snuck under the fence. How we used to get into like kids free day.
I totally remember that.
Yeah.
But I mean, we were influenced from metal stuff too, from England. I think you and I would say that, and AC/DC and all that. But it was important to write our own songs. Right.
And you brought it all the way back. Yeah. So that was what we wanted to do from the beginning.
Yeah.
I started.
And then we had to find somewhere to do that. That's my point. Like Craig Cook came and saw us, and then we started getting gigs in Bellevue. Then, you know, or we booked our own things. So Rick was out there hustling. We really fucking hustled for 16-year-old kids, I think.
I know.
You know, playing at the front. You know, what was the place downtown? And it was
Guerrilla Garden.
That was the final hurrah of the 5-piece thing. But I'm talking before that. The hall and Queen Anne. That was a good show. We played over in Bremerton twice, you know.
Oh, I forgot about that. It was out at the Armory, right?
It's a big deal. We're taking the ferry. We're going on tour.
I take the ferry all the time. I still like it. Yeah.
I know. But I'm just very proud of all those days, and I don't think I've talked about that enough. And I feel like that was such a learning experience for me, and it's made me want to. It's the reason I have a guitar. You are the reason I have a guitar in my hand today, for sure.
What?
Well, you got the guitar. Right. You and many other reasons, but you got a guitar first.
A guitar either way, but we definitely. I mean, we went to practice all the time together.
Yeah,
we enforced each other. We were like, you know, it was like a team. You know, like an alternate family. It was good. We grew up. We learned the work. You know, kind of got our work ethic together and did original music. Rehearsed all the time. And I wanted to say that. The first person I met, of course, in the Freel House was Chris. I mean, I met Rick on the bus, but when I started playing, I was playing with Chris.
Right.
I think Chris was like 8 or 9. He still had braces when we were playing.
He had to be in 4th grade or 5th grade.
Yeah, he was.
Right? Yeah. He was in Sandpoint.
To his house and play, and that was kind of So I owe a lot to Chris. Yeah.
And then Rick started playing bass. Where did you were at Mike Wilson's first, though. You guys figured that out first, and then I went after. But then you had Brad McQueen in the band before I was there.
I forget how Brad McQueen got in the band.
Brad McQueen was there. I don't remember how. You guys played a couple shows.
You had one of those mid-1970s Stratocasters, like the super
brown one.
Yeah.
And he quit because he wanted to play baseball. I remember that.
But he also wasn't in the neighborhood though either. So it wasn't as natural a fit. It was just hard.
He wasn't as crazy as your friend Mike McCready was, that wanted to play with you desperately and would do anything and ride his bike over for the
Right. Well, and
thank you, Brad McQueen, for not joining the band at that. When was it when you got, unless you have I keep cutting you off.
No, go ahead, man.
When was it when you went you started listening to the Replacements?
Yeah.
You know, because there was always a U2 thing that was around the Freel House too. There was that vibe because Rick had those records and I love them, and I think you like them.
I do.
Yeah. But then the Replacements came in for you, and I remember that was a big deal to you in terms of songwriting, I think.
Yeah. So when I quit playing in Shadow and I went to Evergreen, I kind of started with Dylan. Like I kind of went back to folk stuff, and it was actually Alex that turned me onto that and got way into that, like all the way to Woody Guthrie, and just kind of fell in love with that whole genre. And weirdly enough, that kind of took me through the back door into like the Replacements, you know, like Here Comes a Regular and stuff like that.
Oh, love that song.
Kind of being more punky, but also kind of being more earthy, you know, like less like the metal stuff to me. It has a lot of show.
Yeah.
A lot of pomp and circumstance and smoke and lights and a lot of volume, sort of a lot of artifice. But whereas like the Replacements were all about deconstructing all of that shit all the time.
Right.
And to a certain extent, X too, I think a little bit.
You loved X too, right? Yeah.
I loved X. Yeah.
Yeah. And why? I mean, I love him too. Is it the songwriting? Was it the John Doe? Was it the lyrics? Was it the?
There's all these reasons. I mean, John Doe was like, you know, sexiest man alive. And then then you have Billy Zoom, who's just a phenomenal stylist. And then DJ Bonebreak is such a good drummer. Oh my God, he's crazy. And then Exene writes these crazy, awesome poetic lyrics, you know?
Were you kind of getting out of metal at that time? Or, because I feel like around that time I was still into metal, but I was kind of finding blues. I was going that way.
Right. And that's kind of where you found your music, I think, really. I feel we grew up as blues players because we love the Stones and we love AC/DC, and that's all heavy blues based stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, once I got into the Replacements, it was kind of like, you know, they were sticking their thumb at kind of the corporate rock of that era. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but writing killer songs at the same time.
Oh my God, like, Bastards of the Young and all that stuff is so good.
Left of the Dial.
Left of the Dial. Yeah.
Gary Valentine.
Yeah. Chris was making me laugh yesterday. I was talking to Chris on the phone, and I said, well, I'm going to interview Mike, you know, and he said, what? And I said, yeah, I gotta think about what to ask him. And he goes, well, you know, he said, well, make sure you think about what not to ask him too. And then he started laughing. But
what ask me whatever. What does he not want to ask? What's that?
No, he was just saying, just kind of when we were growing up, we had a competition going for a little bit of a competition for playing lead guitar, like trying to in a good way.
I would say, yeah. But I felt like you were the lead guitar player of that situation. I mean, I felt like originally that was. After a while, I think I wanted to start playing leads for sure.
Yeah.
But there's
trading off more and more, I think. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, you're right. But you were fucking sick on guitar. So it's like, I remember not knowing, being intimidated at the time, but also like enamored, you know, like, wow, you know, you were
that's a big compliment.
Back to that 13-year-old, you're playing the Star Spangled Banner with your teeth, but you're really fucking playing it. You know, that's like, that was pretty cool, at least in my mind. But yeah, we started at, you know, a little bit more towards the end, trying to get more of our leads in, or I did.
Well, so that
I had a Kramer. Yeah. I was probably going, woo, yeah, that kind of shit. That's what it is. Yeah.
Well, so I wanted to ask you about, as someone who's grown up and tried different kinds of music, going from playing lead guitar to singing more and focusing more on songwriting, and now doing, which I'm actually having a really good time doing, acoustic stuff.
Yeah.
I find like doing new things kind of really opens you up, and you can kind of re-experience music in a new way every time. I mean, it's a little bit like when you get a new guitar, right? You're like, oh, I can do this and it sounds good. And I got this groove. I didn't hear it that way before. And
right.
I wanted to ask you about doing art and kind of what keeps it fresh for you these days, you know? And because I know you've done visual art, and you kind of that as a kid with your mom teaching art. And
I think that doing the art, go ahead and say your doing, you know, having art supplies around, which I do here, you know, I look at it's just another form of expression of like Polaroids. And if I cut them out, and what does that look like? And that doesn't look good, but this does. And that's another expression that's important to me, because I need to feel creative, I think. And I need, like, you know, if I need to write things, I need to get that out of me, whether it turns into something. You know, watching you over the last 5 or so years, 7 years, you know, doing your own stuff and playing shows and getting better as a singer, and then becoming really good as a singer, you know what I mean? And watching you write songs, like, they come to you like that, it seems, you know, and maybe it's not as easy as it seems, but I look at you as, I was like, oh, I want to try that too. You know, like I'm being serious. Like I admire how you have taken your own thing and started writing your own songs and doing acoustic. And so I've been doing a lot of that lately and trying to learn how to sing from,
you sent me a song that you did about hanging out in the University District.
That's the Ave. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's about you and me.
I really dug it. Did you record a bunch of that stuff yourself?
I did. I recorded it all. And if there's any percussion on it, I sent it to a guy named Nate who played drums on it. Right. I don't think there is on that song, but I recorded mostly everything. And then I had Josh Evans, who did our last record, mix it, because I don't know how to mix. But I have a little setup. I have this mic, and wait, is that?
I see
no. Where is it? Am I not looking right? There it is, right there. There's this mic, and it's Apogee Symphony here. Right. And I've been learning how to do that over the last couple of years, and taking singing lesson and trying to learn about harmonies. I just want to become a really good songwriter and lyricist. I think that's
really.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's something that I hold at a very high regard. I mean, I listen to Springsteen and I go, how does he do that?
Right. It's like casting a spell. You're like, how can you,
how do you make it simple and to the point, but totally amazing too,
Right.
So I want to keep getting better at that, Danny. I mean, I went outside and I was trying to sing today and it wasn't working. So I just stopped, but generally I keep going at it,
right.
I warm up and
I find that super refreshing because somebody in your position, with, I had to look this up because I actually didn't realize how many records your band has sold. Somebody's been in a band 60 million freaking records,
Good Lord.
You could not push yourself and you could be like, well, whatever, I'm just going to be like that guy in Wasp and go get in the pool.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean?
I had my years of being fucked up and I'm so lucky I got out of that. But now it's, I just like to, I look at the replacements. I look at like, Here Comes the Regular. How does he write that? I want that. I want to be able to write songs like that, or I want to be able to songs that mean something. I guess I would put it that way.
Right. So you want a combination of like the lyric and the music, which is.
I think so. It's hard, right? You do it more than I do. But,
well, I don't know about that. I mean, I try and make a process of doing a little bit every day. I do it every day.
Is that your process? Do you have to do it to force it? Not to force it, but you get on a schedule of that?
Yeah, just create space for it. And lately I've been trying to write one song a day. And some of them are, like I don't like Cheerios or something like that.
Right.
But there's good stuff that happens. And there was a quote about it by Lennon that he said, so much of songwriting, and I'm paraphrasing, is kind of coming up with all these good parts. And then they kind of come out when you need them,
right?
Like a B part of a song or a chorus or a riff or whatever. And
he gets them when he needs them, or they come out of
his subconscious does. Yeah.
Yeah. I believe that. Yeah. I mean, I think I can't force stuff. Like I'd really try to force set up lyrics and,
right.
It's just
it's so hard.
It has to come out of the air. Like when I write songs, they just come out of somewhere,
Yeah.
And with lyrics, for me, it's newer for me. So I'm I want to, I get very like, oh, I could play guitar like this. Why can't I write lyrics like that? And it's not a thing. It's like, I haven't been writing lyrics for 30 years,
Right.
It takes time to do those things. And I'm feeling more, I have to say Sue Carr, who, as a voice coach, she's been super helpful in terms of like bringing what I need to do physically out and singing and, getting me over psychological humps that I have. Because I play with a lot of good singers, and I kind of go,
no, I know. Yeah. I mean, you're world class at the other instruments, so it's kind of intimidating in a way to start learning a new one.
But I also love just sitting around playing Dead Flowers or something, that's cool, or Here Comes the Regular. That's like some weird capo way up here or something. I don't know.
Well, I'm really happy to hear you say that because I think it's inspiring and it's.
I'm inspired by you, how you write your songs acoustically and how you do stuff. Because I remember you worked with Carrie and.
Well, you did release my first single ever through your record company, and
happy to do that anytime, Danny Newcomb.
That was so great. Well, it's great talking to you, Mike. I just haven't seen you since the pandemic started.
I know, man.
Yeah,
I'll be back. I'll be back soon.
All right.
Soonish.
Well, say hi to me and a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, you too, man. Say Andrea and everyone. All right, man.
Well, all
All right. Later. Bye.
Bye.
She was all the things that I